In the busy streets of Manila, capital of the Philippines, a small 12-year-old boy named Rico walked among the cars stopped in traffic, carrying a wooden box full of typical sweets. His eyes, though tired, shone with determination as he moved skillfully between vehicles, trying to sell his goods to help support his family, who lived in one of the poorest slums in the city. His faded shirt and worn sandals contrasted with the sincere smile he offered to each driver, even when receiving refusals. Rico's life had never been easy since his father had abandoned them 3 years ago, leaving his sick mother to care for him and his 2 younger siblings. Mornings began before sunrise, when he helped his mother prepare the sweets he would sell all day long, returning home only when the sky was completely dark. His dreams seemed as distant as the stars he could barely see through the city's pollution, but there was a passion that kept the flame of hope burning in his heart. In the few free hours he had, Rico ran to a small establishment at the end of his street where an old television broadcast boxing matches. There, along with other neighborhood boys, he watched hypnotized by the fights of his idol, Manny Pacquiao, the world champion who, like him, had been born into poverty but had managed to change his story through the strength of his fists and his unwavering determination. On the wall of his small room, newspaper clippings formed a mosaic of the boxer's victories, serving as a daily reminder that life could be different. That particularly hot morning, Rico had woken up with a strange feeling, as if something important was going to happen. His mother had noticed his unusual silence as they prepared the sweets, but attributed it to the accumulated exhaustion of recent days when sales had decreased considerably. With his box full of calamari, bibingka, and other traditional Filipino sweets, he had said goodbye with a kiss on his mother's forehead, promising that it would be a better day, without imagining how true this prediction would become. The sun was at its peak when Rico decided to change his usual route, following a more tree-lined avenue where luxury cars frequently circulated. It was an instinctive decision, motivated by the need to find new customers, but one that destiny would transform into the turning point of his existence. Sweat ran down his face as he walked determinedly, mentally reciting Pacquiao's fight statistics like a mantra that gave him strength to continue, not knowing that, in a few minutes, the distance between him and his hero would be smaller than he could ever imagine. Traffic intensified on the avenue when all the traffic lights turned red simultaneously, creating a perfect opportunity for Rico to offer his sweets to impatient drivers. Among the stopped cars, a black SUV with dark windows stood out for its discreet elegance, and Rico, following his instinct, approached it. The windows smoothly lowered, revealing the vehicle's air-conditioned interior and, to his complete surprise, the unmistakable face of Manny Pacquiao, who smiled gently while observing the small vendor paralyzed by emotion. The seconds seemed to stretch into minutes as Rico tried to process the fact that his greatest idol was there, just inches away, looking directly at him with the same determined yet humble expression he had seen so many times on television. His hands began to tremble, making the sweets in the box softly clink, while his heart beat so hard it seemed to want to leap from his chest. It was then that, without thinking, the words he always repeated in his dreams escaped his lips in a whisper laden with emotion and hope. He wanted to fight like Pacquiao. What Rico didn't expect was that Manny could hear that almost inaudible whisper amid the traffic noise. The champion, touched by the sincerity etched in the boy's eyes, recognized in him the reflection of his own childhood in the poor streets of General Santos City. For a moment, Manny saw himself again as that boy who sold cigarettes to help his mother, dreaming of a better future that seemed impossible. The instant connection between the two was like a silent lightning bolt that cut through Manila's hot air, establishing an invisible bridge between past and present. With a gentle gesture, Manny indicated for his driver to buy all the sweets from Rico's box, giving him an amount far exceeding the real value of the merchandise. The boy, still stunned by his idol's presence, almost dropped the money as he tried to calculate mentally, confused by the unexpected generosity. It was at this moment that the traffic light turned green again, and Manny, driven by a sudden inspiration, asked his driver to park the car a few meters ahead, leaving a perplexed Rico in the middle of the street. Pacquiao's security guard approached the boy and, with respect, invited him to follow to where the car was parked. Rico felt his legs tremble as he walked, aware that this moment could change his life, but not imagining how much. Upon reaching the vehicle, he saw the rear door open again and Manny lean out with a card in his hands. The champion's eyes, which had faced the world's greatest fighters, now examined with curiosity and compassion that small candy seller who, unknowingly, had awakened in him a dormant memory and a new purpose that transcended the ropes of the ring. Back in his modest home that night, Rico could barely contain his excitement as he showed his mother Manny Pacquiao's personal card with an address and time handwritten on it. The woman, exhausted after a full day of sewing for a local factory, couldn't believe the story her son was telling with bright eyes and stumbling words. In her trembling hands, the card seemed like an object from another world, a passport to a reality that didn't belong to the harshness of their lives. When Rico handed her the money he had received for the sweets, an amount that would normally take a week to earn, tears began to stream down her face, marked by time and hardship. That same night, in a mansion in the upscale neighborhood of Forbes Park, Manny Pacquiao contemplated the illuminated city through the window of his office. The encounter with the small candy seller had awakened in him memories of his own journey, his mother's sacrifices to raise him, the nights he had slept in cardboard boxes on the streets, and how boxing had been his salvation. His wife, noticing his silent contemplation, approached softly, placing her hand on his shoulder as he shared with her his thoughts about the boy and the decision he had made to help him. The next morning, Rico woke up before the sun rose, unable to sleep due to anxiety. His mother had spent part of the night sewing so he could wear a clean, unpatched shirt for the meeting with Pacquiao. The address on the card indicated a boxing gym in the center of the city, where the champion occasionally trained when he was in the Philippines between international commitments. After a journey that seemed endless on a crowded bus, Rico finally arrived at the place, a simple but well-maintained building with photos of famous fighters decorating its exterior walls. With his heart beating like the accelerated rhythm of a speed bag, Rico timidly entered the gym, being greeted by the characteristic aroma of sweat, leather, and determination. Several fighters were training at different stations, some in the central ring, others on punching bags or jumping rope with metronomic precision. It was then that he spotted Manny, dressed in simple training clothes, talking to an older man who appeared to be his trainer. When their gazes met, the champion smiled and walked towards him, while everyone else stopped what they were doing to observe, curious about who this skinny boy was who was receiving special attention from a boxing legend. Manny Pacquiao, the man who had conquered the world with his fast fists and unwavering humility, placed his hand on Rico's shoulder and introduced him to everyone as a future champion. The trembling in the boy's legs contrasted with the firmness in the boxer's eyes as he explained his story to those present. How he had found Rico selling sweets, how he had recognized in him the same hunger for overcoming that had driven him, and how he had decided that he would be his mentor, personally paying for his training, education, and everything else necessary to transform that whispered dream into a tangible reality. At that moment, under the fluorescent lights of the gym and surrounded by people who had dedicated their lives to the world's oldest sport, Rico felt for the first time the weight and promise of the destiny that was opening before him. The first days of training were brutal for Rico, whose body wasn't accustomed to the rigor of a professional athlete's routines. Waking up at 5 in the morning, running 10 kilometers before breakfast, training basic techniques for hours on end, and strengthening muscles he didn't even know existed transformed each minute into a test of physical and mental endurance. His hands, once calloused from carrying the candy box, now had new blisters from constant contact with gloves and punching bags. At night, lying in his new bed in the accommodation that Manny had arranged for him and his family, Rico felt every inch of his body protest, but the smile on his face revealed a welcome pain, the pain of growth. Manny wasn't an absent mentor who merely financed the boy's dream. He was present whenever his commitments allowed, often surprising everyone by appearing at the gym to personally monitor Rico's progress. The champion watched attentively as the boy learned the fundamentals of boxing: how to position his feet, how to protect his face, how to throw a straight jab. With patience, he corrected his posture, demonstrated movements, and told stories of his own mistakes and lessons, humanizing the process and showing that even legends start as imperfect apprentices. Rico's transformation wasn't limited to the physical aspect. His mind was also being shaped. Manny insisted that, besides training, the boy attend a good school, as he believed that education was as important as skill in the ring. In the mornings, Rico dedicated himself to studies with the same determination he applied to boxing in the afternoons, gradually understanding that Pacquiao was offering him not just the chance to become a fighter, but a complete man. Teachers soon noticed his sharp intelligence and thirst for knowledge, qualities that had remained dormant during years of struggle for survival on the streets. Rico's family also experienced a significant transformation. His mother, now working as a cook in the gym itself, gradually recovered the health that years of deprivation had deteriorated. His younger siblings attended a nearby school and, for the first time, could enjoy a normal childhood, with time for play and dreams of their own. The shadow of extreme poverty that had hung over them for so long began to dissipate, replaced by the light of hope and possibilities that Manny's unexpected gesture had brought to their lives. Months passed and, under the careful guidance of experienced trainers and Pacquiao's watchful eye, Rico progressed at a pace that surprised everyone. His thin body gained muscle definition, his reflexes became faster, his technique more refined. The initial shyness gave way to a quiet confidence that was reflected in his posture, both inside and outside the ring. During a sparring session, he managed to apply a sequence of punches that made Manny rise from his chair, applauding with genuine enthusiasm. At that moment, the boy who sold sweets on the streets to survive began to glimpse his potential as the fighter he had always dreamed of being, while his mentor observed with the silent pride of one who recognizes in another the reflection of his own journey. After 6 months of intensive training, Rico faced his first major challenge when he was entered in a youth amateur tournament in Manila. The competition brought together promising young people from all over the country, many of them with years of experience, while he was still considered a novice in the sport. On the night before his first fight, the nervousness was so intense that he couldn't sleep, tossing and turning in bed while visualizing every movement he had practiced exhaustively. It was then that he received an unexpected visit. Manny Pacquiao, who had interrupted his busy schedule to be present at this crucial moment, sat beside his bed and shared stories of his own insecurities before important fights, humanizing fear and transforming it into fuel for determination. The arena was surprisingly full for a youth tournament, and Rico soon discovered the reason. News that Manny Pacquiao was sponsoring a young fighter had spread quickly, attracting curious onlookers, journalists, and even scouts from renowned academies. The pressure increased exponentially when he realized that all eyes were on him, not just evaluating his skills, but also questioning whether he was really deserving of a boxing legend's attention or just a media charity project. His knees trembled as he walked to the ring for his first fight, aware that every movement would be minutely analyzed. His opponent was a taller and visibly more experienced boy, with defined muscles and a confident look that would intimidate any beginner. In the first rounds, Rico was clearly dominated, receiving blows that tested not only his physique, but also his determination. The crowd began to murmur, and he could feel disappointment hanging in the air, along with the unspoken thought that perhaps Pacquiao had made a mistake in betting on him. It was at this critical moment, with his face swollen and body aching, that Rico sought with his gaze his mentor in the front row. What he saw in Manny's eyes wasn't disappointment, but an unwavering confidence and a subtle nod that said more than 1,000 words. That small gesture awakened something deep inside him, a strength that transcended physical exhaustion and fear of failure. At the beginning of the third round, Rico began to apply everything he had learned, no longer trying to imitate other fighters, but finding his own rhythm and style. His technique wasn't perfect, but there was something in his determination that began to gradually turn the tide, surprising his opponent and silencing the critics. Against all expectations, Rico won his first fight by unanimous decision of the judges, after a spectacular comeback in the final rounds. Upon leaving the ring, exhausted but radiant, He was received by a proud embrace from Manny Pacquiao in front of the cameras that recorded every moment. The next day's headlines spoke not only of the unlikely victory, but also of the extraordinary journey of the boy who, a few months earlier, was selling sweets on the streets of Manila. What no one noticed, except perhaps Manny himself, was how that experience had also affected the champion, reminding him of the true purpose of his success: the possibility of opening doors for others who, like him, needed only an opportunity to show their worth. The following 2 years were of constant growth for Rico, who advanced in both boxing and studies with a dedication that impressed everyone around him. His body had completely transformed. The skinny boy gave way to a strong and agile teenager, with defined muscles and a posture that exuded confidence. His victories accumulated in regional and national competitions, building an impressive record that was beginning to attract international attention. In the streets of his old neighborhood, where he occasionally returned to visit friends, he was received as a local celebrity, a living symbol of hope for children who, like him, dreamed of a future beyond poverty. The relationship between Rico and Manny evolved from mentor-apprentice to a partnership based on mutual respect and admiration. Despite his numerous commitments around the world, Pacquiao always found time to follow the young man's progress, either in person or through video calls when he was abroad. Together, they celebrated victories, analyzed defeats, and planned the next steps of a career that promised to be as brilliant as the champion's own. More important than boxing techniques, Manny taught Rico lessons about humility, social responsibility, and the importance of never forgetting his roots, regardless of the success achieved. Rico's family also flourished under the new circumstances. His mother, now fully recovered, had become a respected figure in the gym, where her culinary skills ensured that all athletes received nutritious and tasty food. His younger siblings, inspired by their older brother's example, dedicated themselves earnestly to their studies and also developed their own passions, one for medicine, another for engineering. The simple but comfortable house where they now lived was always full of laughter and conversations about future dreams, a stark contrast to the times of tense silence when concern for immediate survival consumed all energies. Rico's name began to circulate in international circles when, at 17, he was invited for a special exhibition before a professional Manny Pacquiao fight in Las Vegas. It was the first time he had traveled outside the Philippines, and the magnitude of the event, with spotlights, television cameras, and a deafening crowd, initially intimidated him. However, when he entered the ring to demonstrate his skills against another promising young man, the familiarity of the sport calmed his nerves, allowing him to show all his talent to a global audience. His performance was so impressive that several promoters approached Manny after the event, interested in discussing the young man's professional future as soon as he turned 18. Meanwhile, in Manny Pacquiao's personal life, significant changes were happening. His political career in the Philippines was gaining more and more strength, with rumors of a possible presidential candidacy in the near future. His responsibilities multiplied exponentially, dividing his time between the sport that had consecrated him, political commitments, and his family. However, amid all this turbulence, the champion always found space in his agenda, and in his heart for the project he had impulsively initiated that afternoon in Manila: the transformation of a candy-selling boy's life into a success story that inspired millions. What had begun as a gesture of compassion had become an essential part of his legacy, something that transcended boxing titles and political ambitions. A week before Rico's 18th birthday, Manny Pacquiao organized a press conference that surprised the boxing world. Alongside the young fighter, he announced that he would assume the role of manager and head trainer for Rico in his professional career, a personal commitment rarely seen between an established legend and a rookie. The news caused a great impact in the sports world, both for the uniqueness of the arrangement and for what it symbolized: a champion's absolute belief in the potential of someone he had discovered on the streets. The journalists present were touched by the simplicity with which Manny explained his decision, citing only that he saw in Rico not just great talent, but also human values that boxing and the world needed to celebrate. The culminating event of the announcement was the revelation that Rico would make his professional boxing debut in a preliminary card of an important fight in Manila, with Manny in his corner as a special trainer for the occasion. Tickets sold out in a matter of hours, not only due to the expectations surrounding the young prodigy, but also for the rare opportunity to see Pacquiao in the role of coach. On the night before the big event, mentor and apprentice had a long conversation in the empty gym, illuminated only by a faint light over the central ring. There, they shared memories of the day they met, reflected on the journey traveled, and dreamed of the future that was opening ahead, creating an intimate moment that contrasted with the media spectacle awaiting them. The arena was completely packed on the night of the fight, with important personalities occupying the privileged places and cameras strategically positioned to capture every angle of the historic event. When Rico entered for his walk to the ring, the audience rose in a deafening ovation that echoed off the walls of the venue. Wearing a robe with the colors of the Philippine flag, he advanced with firm steps, followed closely by Manny Pacquiao, whose presence only intensified the electrifying energy of the moment. The cameras alternated between the young debutante and the emotional reactions of his family in the front row, especially his mother, who could barely contain her tears as she watched her son, who once sold sweets on the streets, now being acclaimed as a promise of the national sport. The opponent was an experienced Mexican fighter, known for severely testing promising rookies, and the first rounds were of intense learning for Rico. The pressure of the moment, the bright lights, and the responsibility to meet expectations created a challenging scenario that required more than technique. It required the kind of inner strength that only genuine life difficulties can forge. In the intervals between rounds, Manny's calm but assertive instructions helped Rico adjust his strategy and, more importantly, control his emotions. In the fifth round, following precisely his mentor's advice, he found an opening in the opponent's defense and connected a perfect combination that ended the fight with an impressive knockout, drawing shouts of approval even from the most skeptical experts present. The celebration that followed transcended the sporting result, transforming into a cultural affirmation about the power of example and generosity. During the post-fight interview, with Manny's arm over his shoulders, Rico spoke not about the victory itself, but about the path that had led him there. From candy-selling boy to professional athlete, thanks to the intervention of someone who could simply have gone his way that afternoon in Manila. When reporters asked Pacquiao about his feelings, the world champion responded with words that would be repeated in headlines around the world, that among all his titles and achievements, nothing compared to the satisfaction of seeing human potential flourish when it receives the right opportunity at the right time. That night, as the arena lights gradually went out, it was clear to all present that they had witnessed not only the birth of a new boxing star, but also the expansion of the legacy of a champion who had understood that his greatest victory happened outside the ring. 5 years had passed since Rico's professional debut, and his trajectory in boxing surpassed even the most optimistic predictions. With an impressive record of victories, he had already won his first world title in the featherweight category, following in his mentor's footsteps. His refined technique, combined with an impeccable work ethic, earned inevitable comparisons with a young Pacquiao, although journalists and specialists made a point of emphasizing that Rico was building his own path and identity in the sport. In interviews, he always made sure to mention his humble origins and the fortuitous encounter that had changed his life, keeping alive the message that opportunities can arise in the most unexpected moments. Manny Pacquiao's political career also advanced significantly, culminating in his election as President of the Philippines after a historic campaign centered on proposals to combat poverty and social development. In his inauguration speech, the new president surprised everyone by inviting Rico to stand by his side on the platform, presenting him not just as a champion of the sport, but as a living symbol of the possibilities that arise when talents are discovered and properly nurtured. The young boxer, now a confident 23-year-old man, was moved to hear his name mentioned at such a significant moment for his country's history, understanding the dimension that his personal journey had reached. On a typical sunny morning in Manila, Rico walked through the same streets where he had sold sweets in his childhood, now as part of a documentary about his life that would be broadcast internationally. The production, supported by the Pacquiao administration, aimed to show the social transformations underway in the Philippines through the personal story of its most famous protégé. During the filming, he made a point of visiting his old neighborhood, greeting residents who had known him in difficult times and marveling at the improvements in local infrastructure, a direct result of social programs implemented by the new government. It was during this nostalgic visit that Rico noticed a thin boy selling sweets on a busy corner, exactly as he used to do years ago. Interrupting the filming, he approached the boy and bought all his merchandise, asking about his dreams and aspirations. When the small vendor, without initially recognizing him, confided that he dreamed of being a doctor, but knew it was impossible due to his family's financial situation, Rico felt an immediate connection to his past. That same day, he decided to personally sponsor the boy's studies, establishing a direct link with the family and promising to follow his school progress, without fanfare or public announcements, simply replicating the individual gesture that had transformed his own life. The following night, during a dinner at the presidential residence, Rico shared with Manny Pacquiao the encounter with a small candy seller and the decision he had made to personally sponsor his studies. The president listened attentively, with a serene smile that reflected the satisfaction of seeing the cycle of generosity complete itself perfectly. In that silent moment of mutual understanding, both recognized how their lives had intertwined indissolubly through an apparently casual encounter on the streets of Manila. A champion who had heard the hopeful whisper of a boy selling candy and decided to make a difference, and a boy who, transformed by the opportunity received, now extended the same hand to others. The true victory, they understood then, was not in the titles, medals, or political positions achieved, but in the ability to recognize in another the dormant potential and the courage to act to awaken this potential, thus creating an endless chain of possibilities that transcended their individual stories and became part of the social fabric of an entire nation. If you like this kind of story, leave your like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on the next videos.